Have you ever felt the chilling truth behind a perfect life? That unsettling whisper in the quiet moments, suggesting that the race you're running has a finish line that's perpetually moving, a prize that feels hollow even in your grasp. It's the silent crisis of the modern soul, a deep yearning for authenticity in a world that celebrates the performance of success. If this message finds you, it's not by accident. It's a sign from the universe, a confirmation for your spirit. Let this be the moment you feel seen. If these words resonate with the deepest parts of you, show it with a like, subscribe for more moments of clarity, and share your journey in the comments below with a simple, "I am ready." Because your story is a beacon for others who are also learning to walk away from the illusion. Alan Watts, a wise voice in the chaos, once offered a profound key to liberation. You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. This isn't just a clever phrase. It is a sacred permission slip to release the crushing weight of a past you've outgrown, to shed the identity that society has so carefully constructed for you. Have you ever seen him? The man who had everything the world told him he should want. The corner office with a skyline view, the perfectly tailored suits, the respect of his peers, the seamless projection of a life won. You've seen him in boardrooms, at galas, perhaps even in your own mirror. And then, one day, he just walked away. Not because he was tired, not because he lost, but because his soul had awakened to a terrifying clarity. He saw through it all. He finally perceived the grand performance for what it was. He saw through the hollow praise, the promotions that were merely higher levels in the same gilded cage. He saw through the late nights fueled by ambition, nights that stole moments from his family, his health, his own spirit. He saw through the polite smiles that never reached the eyes, the currency of a world where connection is a transaction. He saw the intricate machinery of the game, the constant chasing, the competing, the comparing, the complying. And once his spirit saw it, it could never be unseen. Alan Watts called this the illusion of winning, the great lie whispered from the cradle to the grave, that if you just keep going, if you just acquire one more thing, one more title, one more zero in your bank account, you will finally feel whole. But what if that wholeness never arrives at the destination you're running toward? What if the prize at the top of the ladder is just an empty box? What if you spend decades of your precious life force climbing, only to realize, with breathtaking heartbreak, that your ladder was leaned against the wrong wall the entire time? Most people never dare to ask these questions. They are too busy. Too busy chasing the approval of others, too busy running from their own inner emptiness. They are caught in the momentum, a relentless current that promises a shore it never reaches. But every now and then, there is a man who stops. A soul who dares to pause in a world that worships relentless motion. In that sacred pause, he sees it all. He sees the game board from above. He sees the mask he's been wearing. A mask that has grown so tight it has started to reshape his own face. He sees the profound price he paid for the applause of an audience that doesn't truly know him. And with a quiet strength that shakes the very foundations of the system, he walks away. Not in shame, not in failure, but in something far more terrifying to the world he leaves behind: clarity. Because when a man no longer believes in the game, he becomes immune to its rewards and invulnerable to its punishments. When he is immune to the rewards, he becomes unreachable, unbribable, untouchable. You've seen this man before, even if you didn't recognize him at the time. Maybe you passed him on a hiking trail at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday, while you were rushing between meetings, and you felt a pang of envy at his unhurried pace. He looked calm, steady, like someone who had nothing to prove and nowhere to be, except right here, right now, fully aligned with his own being. Maybe he was your old colleague, the one who used to grind harder than anyone, who burned the midnight oil with a ferocious intensity, until one day, he just didn't. He deleted his LinkedIn profile. He stopped replying to the big opportunity emails. He vanished. But he didn't vanish into nothing. He vanished into himself, into a life he never knew he was allowed to live. And maybe, deep down, some part of you envied his disappearance, his radical act of self-reclamation. Because you remember, in the quiet archives of your soul, you remember what it feels like to slow down. You remember what it's like to feel the wind without thinking of deadlines, to laugh without checking your calendar, to wake up without a feeling of dread. You remember, but it feels like another lifetime, doesn't it? A version of you that had the divine audacity to want more than just achievement. We are told that success is the goal, that you must sacrifice your peace now for a promised freedom later. We are told that the hustle is a virtue, and that burnout is just proof that you care. But what if none of that is true? What if the world has been selling you a definition of success that was never meant to make you free, only to make you productive? What if the life you're so meticulously building is silently breaking you, not in ways anyone can see, but in the quiet, private places of your soul that you never let anyone into? The man who walked away felt it too. The ache, the hollowness, the slow, dawning realization that the more he won by the world's standards, the less he felt like himself. The more he climbed, the less connected he became to his own spirit. The closer he got to success, the further he drifted from his own soul. So he did the unthinkable. He stepped off the treadmill. He walked off the battlefield. He dared to ask the question no one wants to ask. What if I already had enough and just didn't know it? You see, the world doesn't fear the man who fails. It celebrates his story of redemption, for it reinforces the rules of the game. The world fears the man who stops playing altogether. Because he can't be used anymore. He can't be baited with praise. He can't be guilted with expectations. He's no longer running toward approval or away from a sense of inadequacy. He is still. He is centered. He is whole. Not because he has nothing, but because he no longer needs everything to feel like he is enough. That is the man who becomes untouchable. Not louder, not richer, not more impressive, just free. And freedom, in a world addicted to validation, is the most dangerous and powerful currency of all. You didn't get here overnight. You spent 20, maybe 25 years, learning the rules, playing the game. You climbed the ladder. You followed the blueprint. You built the resume, the network, the reputation. You bought the house. You wore the right clothes. You said the right things. You read the right books. You shook the right hands. You built the image, piece by perfect piece. And somewhere along the way, you disappeared. Not all at once, but piece by piece, quietly, subtly, in the name of ambition, in the name of providing, of proving, of becoming someone. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the titles, beneath the goals, something kept whispering, "Is this it? Is this really it?" You ignored it at first. You called it weakness. You called it fatigue. You told yourself everyone feels this way, that it's just a rough patch, a phase, a part of the climb. But the whisper didn't go away. It got louder in the silences between meetings, in the stillness before sleep, in the reflection in the mirror. Because while the world clapped for your grind, you were quietly falling apart, and no one noticed, because exhaustion looks noble on a man. Burnout gets you admiration. Self-neglect is celebrated as long as the numbers look good. And if you dare to stop, you're labeled ungrateful, or soft, or broken. Because a man who questions success threatens the system that runs on his silent compliance. But here's the truth most men will never say out loud. You gave it everything. Your time, your body, your weekends, your relationships, your presence with your children, your peace of mind. And in return, you got something that doesn't feel like it was ever really yours. A title, a salary, a position in someone else's structure. But not joy, not fulfillment, not connection. Just noise, just motion. A life so full it's suffocating. They called you a provider. They said you were driven. They said you were inspiring. But they didn't have to live inside your mind. They didn't see what it cost you to be the man they admired. They didn't feel the dull ache behind your smile. They didn't notice how your laughter disappeared years ago, replaced by polite nods and practiced responses. And here's the part that stings the most. You got what you were told to want. You won the game, and you still feel empty. Because maybe what you were chasing wasn't meant to be caught. Maybe the ladder was real, but the prize at the top was an illusion. Alan Watts said we are all just trying to get somewhere, but no one knows where that somewhere is. So we keep going, Keep moving, keep achieving, hoping that if we just reach the next level, the next milestone, the next raise, the feeling will change. But what if it doesn't? What if more is never enough? Because more was never the point. What if you're not lost, but trapped, not by failure, but by everything that looks like success from the outside? This is the quiet crisis of the modern man. Not poverty, not war, not chaos, but a slow, spiritual starvation disguised as achievement. And no one talks about it, because to admit it feels like betrayal. You work too hard to question it now. You sacrifice too much. You burn too many bridges. So you stay. You smile. You show up. But inside, you know something's wrong. You know something's missing. And you wonder, in the moments when no one's watching, what would happen if you just stopped. Not because you failed, but because you're finally ready to live. His name is Thomas. He's 52. He runs 3 companies, drives a black European car, lives in a house with more bathrooms than people. He's been married twice, has kids he doesn't really know but still pays for everything. By every definition that matters to the outside world, Thomas is successful. He's the guy you point to when someone says, hard work pays off. The guy people look up to, even when they don't know him. The guy who made it. But here's what they don't see. Every morning, Thomas wakes up to the sound of an alarm that feels more like a threat than a beginning. Not for his kids. They stopped asking for his time years ago. Not for his ex-wives. They got what they needed and moved on. Not for himself. He's not even sure who that is anymore. He used to believe in the hustle. Used to believe in pushing through. Used to believe that if he just worked hard enough, long enough, the fog would lift and everything would finally make sense. But it never did. And one day, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even sad. It was a Thursday afternoon. He'd just finished a 2-hour meeting that solved nothing, a carousel of jargon, small talk, power plays, and posturing. He closed his laptop, stared at the blank screen for a moment, and just didn't open it again. That was it. No grand statement, no resignation email, no mic drop. No flames, no fallout, no fury, just stillness. Just the quiet decision to stop pretending. Because Thomas didn't burn out. He woke up. He didn't break down. He broke free. He realized that what he thought was his life was actually just his role. A role he never auditioned for but played anyway, because it paid well. But roles are exhausting when they aren't yours. And the applause means nothing when it's for a character you don't even like. Thomas didn't hate his job. He just stopped needing to be needed. Stopped mistaking productivity for purpose. Stopped confusing attention for love. And that's when it all became terrifyingly clear. He had built a castle on quicksand. Everything that looked stable, the money, the accolades, the calendar full of meetings was hollow. Decorated, respected, but hollow. And no one told him he could leave. No one ever says, hey, by the way, you're allowed to stop. Because men like Thomas aren't supposed to stop. They're supposed to carry it all and smile while doing it. But that day, he didn't. He didn't smile. He didn't explain. He didn't ask for permission. He just walked away. Not to punish anyone, not to make a statement, but because he realized, for the first time in decades, that he didn't have to stay, that nothing he truly valued was in that room anymore. That the only thing keeping him in the game was fear. And once fear is gone, the game loses its grip. Thomas didn't walk away from success. He walked away from the illusion of success. And that is the most radical act a man like him can commit. Thomas didn't fail the game. He didn't lose his edge. He didn't burn out. He didn't crumble under pressure. He simply stopped mistaking the game for life. And that is exactly what Alan Watts spent decades trying to explain. Watts once said we confuse success with value, but success is just society's applause for your exhaustion. Think about that. You don't get praised for being whole. You don't get celebrated for being still. You don't get recognized for being enough. You get rewarded for performing endlessly, in roles you didn't choose, chasing goals you didn't question, under systems you never consented to. And the more exhausted you are, the more applause you receive. That's not fulfillment. That's not freedom. That's a well-designed trap. Alan Watts believed we've all been tricked, conditioned into believing that life is a linear race, that your worth is measured by how far ahead you are, that more equals meaning more money, more status, more deals, more discipline, more goals, more wins. But what happens when more never ends? What happens when the finish line keeps moving every time you get close? What happens when success becomes an addiction and the high never lasts? That's the illusion. You're not running towards something. You're running in circles around a story that was given to you, not by your soul, but by a system that needs you to keep running, so you won't stop, so you won't ask questions, so you won't look up and realize it's all been a loop. And the moment you do, the game starts to break. Watts called this the trap of becoming, the endless pursuit of becoming someone, instead of simply being. But society doesn't value being. Being doesn't fuel the economy. Being doesn't build empires. Being doesn't make you predictable, obedient, monetizable. Being is dangerous because it means you've stopped needing to be sold something. That's why Thomas scared them. Not because he walked away, but because he didn't need their validation anymore. He didn't need to win. And when you no longer need to win, you're no longer afraid to lose. That kind of man, calm, clear, unbothered, is a threat to any system built on fear. The world will tell you he gave up, that he quit too soon, that he wasted his potential. But maybe potential isn't about how high you climb. Maybe it's about how deeply you live. Thomas didn't give up. He gave in to something deeper, to the knowing that life isn't a scoreboard, it isn't a ladder, it isn't a resume. It's a moment, unfolding right now, that you've been too busy chasing to feel. Alan Watts believed that the greatest spiritual clarity doesn't come from pushing harder, but from letting go. Letting go of the pressure to be extraordinary. Letting go of the lie that rest is weakness. Letting go of the belief that success is proof you're enough because you were enough before they convinced you otherwise. And when a man finally sees that, truly sees it, he becomes untouchable. After he walked away, Thomas didn't make an announcement. He didn't explain himself. He didn't write a thread about it. He didn't owe anyone a narrative that made sense. He just began living differently. And at first, people didn't know what to do with it. They'd say things like, "You're not on LinkedIn anymore? You're turning down that partnership. You're not going to the conference this year." They asked with concern, but also disbelief, as if stepping back was a symptom of something wrong. But Thomas wasn't falling apart. He was falling back into himself. He no longer viewed his calendar as a badge of honor. Busy didn't mean important anymore. Back-to-back meetings didn't mean needed. Late-night emails didn't mean valuable. In fact, the more silence he allowed, the more real he became. For the first time in years, he started eating slowly. He started walking without headphones. He started calling his son, not to check in, but just to hear his voice. He wasn't rushing through his life anymore, because now he knew that everything he once believed made him successful was actually keeping him from being present. He stopped chasing titles, stopped chasing optics, stopped chasing approval. And with that, something incredible happened. The weight left. Not all at once, but layer by layer. The pressure to be on, the urgency to be right, the anxiety of being forgotten, it all started to fade. Not because he accomplished more, but because he stopped needing so damn much. Friends said he'd changed, that he seemed distant. Colleagues called him less ambitious. But what they didn't understand was, Thomas wasn't distancing himself from them. He was distancing himself from the performance, from the old version of himself, the one who couldn't breathe unless he was becoming someone. Now, he wasn't becoming anything. He was simply being. No strategies, no metrics, no polished narratives. Just a man, untethered from the race. And it turns out, when you stop chasing what they told you to want, you start receiving what you were always meant to have: time, clarity, soul, and a kind of strength that can't be measured on a chart. People don't fear the man who wins. They admire him. They celebrate him. They might even try to be like him. But they don't fear him, because a man who plays the game no matter how well, is still part of the system. He's still bound by its rules, still chasing, still needing to be seen. But the man who stops playing, the man who simply steps out of the arena without apology, without noise, without asking for permission, that man is dangerous, because he can't be controlled. You can't buy him with praise. You can't guilt him with expectations. You can't bait him with status or scare him with rejection. He doesn't walk into a room needing recognition. He walks in already complete. And that's what unsettles people. Not his silence, but the power beneath it. Not his rejection of the game, but the peace he carries after leaving it. Because deep down, everyone else is still playing, still performing, still exhausted, still waiting for someone to tell them they're enough. And here comes a man who no longer needs any of it. That disrupts everything. Thomas no longer sees titles as meaning. He no longer sees pressure as proof that he matters. He no longer feels obligated to be a role model or a cautionary tale. He's not interested in impressing anyone, not his peers, not his past, not the voice in his head that used to scream, "You're still not there yet." Because now, he's not trying to get there. He's here, fully, finally. And the irony? Now that he's stopped trying to be anything, he's become more than he ever was. More grounded, more honest, more whole. Not because he gained something new, but because he dropped everything that wasn't him. The mask, the hustle, the obsession with being seen, all gone. And what remains is real. This is the shift no one talks about, because it doesn't sell, it doesn't make noise, it doesn't go viral, it doesn't look impressive from the outside. But it's the most radical act a modern man can commit. To reclaim his sovereignty, to live without the need to prove, to let go of external definitions of worth and write his own. Alan Watts said that freedom isn't found in more control, it's found in surrender. But surrender isn't passive, it's not giving up. It's refusing to trade your peace for applause. It's choosing depth over performance, presence over productivity, truth over optics. And when a man does that, really does that, the world doesn't know what to do with him. Because he doesn't play by the script. He doesn't seek approval. He doesn't flinch when others question his path. He simply walks it. With clarity, with integrity, with a kind of quiet strength that cannot be touched. So let me ask you this. What would change in your life if you stopped chasing what you were told to want and started listening to what your soul has been whispering all along? What would happen if you stopped performing, if you stopped proving, if you stopped running towards some version of success that never really fit you in the first place? Would people say you're giving up? Maybe. Would they say you've lost your edge? Probably. But you'd be free, because walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And the man who sees through success can never be controlled again.